Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Science Technology series. I'm Dr. Vanessa Beasy, and today we're going to be talking all about birds. Today I'll be sharing with you a tutorial for another citizen science app called Merlin Bird ID. And I'll also touch a little bit on an application called eBird and other resources, even on the internet, that you can use to help you identify birds and hopefully eventually report them on iNaturalist. So as we get started, please remember that you can write any comments or questions in the comments section, and I'll be checking in on those regularly to answer any questions you might have. Even if you're watching this after our live event, I will keep track of them to answer any questions that come up. We're going to get started. As you get started, if you haven't already, go ahead and download the Merlin Bird ID app, or you can go to ebird.org, which is another great place that has the same features as all of these applications that we'll be talking about. So everything that I'm sharing with you today is a result of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's work. This is an awesome group that is promoting citizen science, inspiring people to go birding. And while I specialize in sea turtles and primarily reptiles, I have recently become an avid birder. Since quarantine, I have started to learn all about all of the different birds that are around us here in Costa Rica, and I'm excited to share with you some of those observations later on. But as we get started, I'm going to walk you through what it looks like when you first open the eBird app. So if you haven't already, if you have your phone with you and you have the application, you can go ahead and open it up. I'll show you what that screen looks like, both on my phone and on the screen here. So when you get Merlin Bird ID the first time, you'll want to go ahead and get what we call a package. You install these bird packs right from the application, and you can pick the location that you're at or locations that you go to frequently. So here you can see that I've downloaded the Costa Rica pack. This can take quite a bit of room, so if you don't have a lot of room on your phone, be sure to check out ebird.org. I'll show that later as well. It's a great alternative that has, again, similar features. So, as you get started, one of my favorite features on this app is the Start Bird ID section. So, in this application, you will click Start Bird ID, and basically the application will walk you through some basic details about what bird you saw that helps you narrow down what bird it might be. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with the old school printed version of this, where you have a guide and there's lots and lots of pictures of birds, but it might take you a really long time to find the bird that you saw, and you have less certainty that you're sure this is what you saw. In this case, you start the question asking, where did you see the bird? This is super important because the range of the bird can really help narrow down. There are some birds that just don't occur where you observed it, and so it automatically discards all of those birds. The next step is, what size was your bird? This is one of the most important things to observe when you see a bird. Is it as big as a goose? Is it a tiny little hummingbird? That, again, is going to help us narrow down what bird this could possibly be. And then finally, what were the main colors? As soon as you see a bird, even if it's flying overhead, try to pick out what those key colors are. Here you can select more than one, so if the bird is very colorful. I've just given you an example. I selected black and white, and I believe it was a robin-sized bird on my end to show you what might pop up. So after you've gone through all of those, then it will ask you, was the bird eating at a feeder, swimming or wading on the ground, in trees or bushes, on a fence or wire, soaring or flying? These are things that don't necessarily completely narrow down the bird, but they help us understand the type of behavior that you saw. Obviously, not all birds are going to be swimming or wading, so that can also help us understand what exactly you got to see. And then finally, once you hit next, the program will automatically pull up all of the most likely species that you saw. In this case, a Hoffman's woodpecker, which is something that we actually see quite a bit around here in Costa Rica. They have a very high chirp that I can play for you in a little bit. So just by answering those few questions, you'll come to a list, and you can scroll through. There's usually several options, and you can confirm, even listening to the calls that these birds have, whether this is the bird that you saw or not. This is super helpful for me. I don't know that much about birds. I wasn't sure how to start identifying them. So when I got started here in Costa Rica, it was so overwhelming how many different species of birds there were. A lot of them look very similar. So as you go through this process, you'll learn what to look for, perhaps the shape of the tail, or especially listening very well to the call. And that will help you identify the bird better as you go. So moving forward, another great feature that this app has is just kind of an explore function. So hold on really quick. I will pull this up. So in the main screen, there's also the option to get photo ID. You'll have to download an extra package in order to do that. I haven't done it because it takes quite a bit of room. But the next option below that is Explore Birds. If you go ahead and click on that, you'll have an entire list of all of the birds in the packages that you've installed. What I really like about this is if I see something, I know it's a hummingbird. I don't necessarily want to go through all of those questions that help you identify a bird. I can look at very quickly all of these pictures of the hummingbirds that are in this area. And when you click on the picture, I've switched now to a chachalaca because this is one of my local favorites and I wanted to use the example. When you click on it, you can read a little bit about the bird. There's actually several different pictures that you can flip through. That's important because not all of the animals look exactly like the drawing or the picture in your guide. There's a lot of variation, whether it's a young bird, a male or a female, and so looking through those options can also help you out. And the next part is my favorite. This application also has bird sounds. There are so many times that I hear all kinds of things and I can't find the bird in the tree. And so here you can actually go through and click and listen to these calls. I will do that in a second from the website when I share it with you. But it's wonderful because if you don't see the bird, you still might be able to identify based on its sound. And sometimes it's surprisingly distinct. And then finally, a really important feature here, if you are going through the process in this way, is to look at the map and see whether this species even occurs where you are right now. So you can see that here in Costa Rica, there's only a tiny little part of our country where this chachalaca usually occurs. So I'm able to tell that yes, this could possibly be the bird that I saw. If it only occurred, say, in North America, it'd be very easy to discard that bird from the list of possibilities. All right, so I'm going to check in really quick and see if there's any comments. Please remember, you can always drop in a question if you're having any issues on your end, or if you have anything that you're curious about, feel free to comment. So moving forward, the app that I shared with you, Merlin, which is the Bird ID app by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, excuse me, is the early version. It's kind of for beginner birders. If you really don't know how to identify a bird, this is a great place to start. But once you start birding a lot, if you go, say, on a trail walk and you're looking to just observe birds, maybe you brought binoculars and you're really getting into it like I am. In this case, you've probably familiarized yourself a little bit with the most common birds, and what you really want to do is keep a bird list so that while you're walking through the trail, you're not flipping through a guidebook and writing down your list. You can quickly kind of check off what you're seeing as you go. And so once you get to this stage in your birding life, the next best app to have, is called eBird. So eBird is, as I mentioned, kind of the more advanced birders app. This app, when you enter, has an option for tracking. So basically, you go ahead and start a checklist. You'll enter the date, the time, and go ahead and hit start. Once you start, it automatically tracks the GPS location of everywhere you're going, and it will also track how long you've been walking and the distance. These are really important when we're actually trying to measure biodiversity. It's important to know what effort we put in. So for a lot of our more advanced birders, it's great to know just how much time you've spent and how much walking you've done looking for birds. In this portion of the app, you can see that there's a list of species that are close by. You can also type in to search. And so you'll simply observe a bird. We, in this instance, heard a tinamou, and go ahead and check it and click the plus button, and that will add the species to your list. If you see more than one individual or more than one occurrences, then you can also keep adding on to that number. So from there, all you have to do is click stop, and then it will ask you to confirm the location, how many observers there were, and how much time you spent, again, to help us narrow down just how much time is being invested. And when you hit continue, you'll have the option to submit, and this automatically gets submitted to a database that eBird keeps. This database is very similar to iNaturalist, but here in Nosara, we're currently promoting a biodiversity project inspiring all of our community members to submit all of the reports of their observations. So if you are here in the area, I highly recommend that you use these birding apps to help you identify the bird, but still report everything on iNaturalist so that we have all of that information in one location. There's not necessarily a transfer of data from eBird to iNaturalist, although there are similar groups involved. So moving forward, I wanted to share with you the web-based versions of this, as I know a lot of you might not have space on your phone, or maybe that's just not the type of technology that you like to use. And before I do that, I want to share with you some of the local observations, and then I'll share some of the information that we can find on those species within the eBird app. So I'm going to show you this page right here is the, this is the Nosara Biodiversity Project homepage. We have this project hosted by iNaturalist. It's a large-scale biodiversity study of the area, and essentially anyone that logs an observation on iNaturalist within the boundaries of the National Wildlife Refuge and the buffer zone around it here in Östenal and Nosara, those observations will directly get added in here. You can see actually that we have a recent observation here of a rufous-tailed hummingbird. My internet's a little slow, so we'll have to give it a second. And we also have another observation of a plain chachalaca. So here, this is a great way to see a little bit of all of the biodiversity we see in the area, but specifically for birds, I wanted to show you just a few observations and then show you what some of the most common birds are that we see here in the area. So you can see on our most observed species lists, we have the turquoise-browed motmot. So now I'm going to show you the version of eBird. So when you go to ebird.org, you can look at all of the different species and get all of the same information that's in the app. This photo here is the turquoise-browed motmot. That's one of the most observed species here. And one of my favorite things about this and the app is that you can listen to the bird. So we're going to go ahead and listen. I have to wait a second as it loads. So for those of you in the Nosara area, that's probably a very similar sound, familiar sound. For a very long time, I heard this sound and never saw the bird. And when I saw the bird, I was just amazed. It's one of the most beautiful ones in the area. It's so colorful. And once you hear the sound, you know to go looking for it. I'm going to share with you another one that I personally really like. It's the chachalaca. The plain chachalaca is kind of the ugly duckling, let's say, of the birds in the jungle here, but it's very loud, and I quite get excited when I hear it. It always comes in groups and hangs out in the tree, so I'm going to share with you what that one sounds like as well. My dog was responding to those sounds. So you can see here the chachalacas are very loud. It's a very distinctive sound. So even if you don't see the birds, if you hear that sound, you know that there's a chachalaca there. This is one of my favorite parts of birding, is starting to identify the sounds and learn, especially if you go often in the same area. You're very likely to start building a list of birds that are common species. And as you go and learn, it becomes more and more fun to learn more species. So hopefully this has inspired you to pay a little bit more attention to the birds outside of your house and to learn more about them. These apps are really informative. They can tell you a lot about local species and their migrations. And you might see that there's actually some birds where you are, if you don't live here in Costa Rica, that may be migrating all the way from here in Costa Rica. And so in a lot of ways, this shows how we are still all connected, even though we might be miles apart. I'm going to double check again to see if there's any more questions. So the two apps that I shared are the Merlin Bird ID app and the eBird app. And if you go to ebird.org, you can get access to all of the information that's contained within those two apps. You can see bird guides, you can look at maps, you can hear sounds, and see different images of these animals. And be sure to check out our biodiversity project on iNaturalist. The Nosara Biodiversity Project collects all of the observations that are made for species around the Nosara area. And we've already got quite a great collection. This will be the last episode of our science technology series for a little while. I'm hoping that we'll be posting soon about upcoming translations to Spanish, and hopefully we'll be back online in a little bit once we have all of that translated. And we'll continue to develop content, hopefully have some more educational series out to share with you soon. Thank you all for joining and following us. I hope you've learned a lot, and feel free, as always, to write comments and questions, and we'll follow up with you as soon as we can. Everyone have a wonderful day.